Okay, so welcome everybody to this third meeting for our Pathways project. And we're going to be focusing today on motivation, which might already be an issue or already be something we've focused on in our own experiences. We'll say a bit more about that later. So could we maybe do some introductions? Norman, would you start? That's just the order that I can see.
I think we all know each other anyway, don't we, by now? So it's just a way of saying hello to everybody. Thank you for coming. And I'm in Surrey. And as we've said already, the weather's brilliant. The wildflowers are blooming and I'm very happy.
Lovely. Jenny.
Hello, hola. I'm in Kingston, which is part of Surrey as well, about 2 miles from Wimbledon and a mile from you.
Ross? Can't hear you. Okay, I'll let you try and work out. Yeah, I'll move on to Valerie while you work out your sound, which was perfect before. Oh, he's gone and is coming.
Thanks.
Okay, Valerie.
I was just about to offer some helpful assistance, which is always difficult when everybody's trying to say stuff to you. Hi, everyone. I'm Valerie, and as the song goes, I'm a long way to Tipperary. I'm in Southern Ireland.
Lovely. Great. And now Britt.
Yes. Hello. Good evening, everybody. I'm Britt, working at the INCA University, and I'm situated in Lillehammer, Norway, and it's really sunny outside.
Lovely. Catalina?
Hello, I'm Catalina Caicedo. I work at Marymount Medellin in South America, in Colombia. And the weather here is always beautiful. It's the city of the eternal spring, basically.
Great. That's lovely. And we might need some of that at some time during one of our meetings when we haven't got all this lovely weather to talk about. So you can send us some sunshine then. Thank you. Josephina. Welcome, Josephina.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm Josephina. I'm from Chile. I work in an early years center as well as university. And just looking forward to keep on going with people that are as interested as I am and work with the SDGs.
Lovely. Thank you. Russ, can we hear you now?
Let's see. Let's hear. Hooray.
Yes.
You know how I solved that problem? Turned it off and then on again.
Thank you.
The old technique.
Great.
Yeah.
I thought banging the computer also worked.
Shouting. Carry on, Russ.
Well, today I seriously considered retiring for good because the work that I was doing was so not just boring, but a load of nonsense. I was doing some assessments for people taking national professional qualifications in leadership in schools, and the documentation was bureaucratic junk. And it's poorly paid as well. So I've just come back from a nice little walk down near the canal, just down the hill from here in where I live in Surrey. And yes, I'm feeling much more upbeat, but I have got to go at 7:30 because that's when my dinner will be on the table. And I don't dare risk it. Yeah. But I have actually, on a more serious note, I've been having a crisis of commitment to the idea of contributing to saving the world. I'm feeling very pessimistic about it for a whole bunch of reasons, and it's not just something that came over me today, but I've been thinking a lot about the wars in the world that we've got, greedy companies, wicked politicians, unscrupulous people in power all over the place, and the rate at which things are going wrong. So I wish I could calculate the sort of balance between good principled people who are prepared to do it and others. And of course, when the activists get going, I think a lot of the time they stir up a lot of antipathy, as well as gaining support, because if somebody can't be bothered, then they'll just say, there they are, a load of troublemakers lying down in the road again, or whatever they happen to be doing. So, and the media, you know, depends what you read, I suppose, doesn't it? However, I'm doing my little garden and thoroughly enjoying that.
Good.
And I've extended No Mow May into June. And so there's a mass of daisies and they look very nice. And birdies are coming down and feeding in the trees. I mean, the garden is terribly small, about the size of the penalty area. No, smaller than the penalty area on a football pitch. The 6-yard box is more like it, for those who are familiar with it. Anyway, sorry, that's enough from me.
Well, Russ, you sound rather jaded, so let's hope this meeting is going to revive us all, and yes, pump us up, or maybe just give us some brightness and some positivity. I mean, you know what they say about the pessimists. I mean, that they've actually got it right, and that's why they're pessimistic. But let's be optimistic. Okay, now I'm sorry, I'm looking at what Norman wrote earlier, that the focus for today was, what are we doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? What's causing us to? What have been the challenges? How have we stayed committed? A whole series of questions, and that's our focus for today. And some of our colleagues who haven't been able to come this evening to the meeting have written something about this. So we do have already some ideas, but I think I should be handing over to you now, Norm.
I guess, as you said right at the start, Melissa, we're a couple of months into this now, and we'll all have struggled perhaps to start doing what we're doing, because I think starting something is always the hardest thing to do. And it's dependent on so many factors. So somehow we've got to discover how to motivate ourselves into these sorts of things that we're doing. The last inquiry we did last year, we came across the inner development goals and decided that this was a useful framework. It was designed to try and map out the types of skills and qualities and values that were necessary in order to engage with the SDGs. And when we looked at our own efforts, we felt that there were certain things lacking in this framework. And one of the most important things we detected was the absence of anything about motivation or commitment. And I guess I remember reading Ron Barnett's book, I think it was back in 2007, where he said will was the most important word in education. Well, I think will is probably the most important word in many aspects of action, in fact, all aspects of action, but particularly as far as SDGs are concerned. If we are going to try and live in a way that is going to be helpful to securing a more sustainable future, then and we're trying to align ourselves to greater or lesser extents to the principles that underlie the SDGs, then will the motivation to do these things is of immense importance. So trying to represent what I think is probably very, very complex, the idea of motivation, is quite difficult. So I've had a go at a couple of pictures because I like pictures. And I think we can visualize it. One way we can visualize it is in this massive flows of information that we are subjected to all our lives, day in, day out, from all the different contexts that we inhabit, stuff that's coming in from the past. So having experienced something in the past, those information flows still keep coming at us in our present, from all sides, from all contexts. And as we think and imagine into the future, then information flows connecting to ideas and visions of what might be are also there. So we're in this flux, if you like, and these things, this information flow can engage with our perceptions, our cognitive, our cognition and our emotional selves, to form some sort of reaction. And it's in this process of forming some emotional engagement that motivation begins to affect us. Of course, we have the internal sort of psychological motivational dimension, and then the stuff that's happening all around us in the world, the external factors that motivate us or demotivate us. So the diagram is really also attempting to bring out the fact that where there's lots of competing priorities, that certain perceptions we have about ourselves and the environment will trigger things which are positive in terms of motivation. We want to try and do something. We care about something deeply enough to actually do something about it. But at the same time, there are other factors which are acting almost in a conflictual way, reducing that energy, enthusiasm for doing something because maybe we have to do something else. And I had a very good example this Sunday where we had family coming for dinner. The sun was shining. I wanted to get out in the garden and do stuff. But no, wife said, you've got to clean the house. So I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours just doing stuff in the house that I didn't really want to do. So, I mean, it's that sort of thing that we're trying to grapple with every day of our lives, really. And I think there's an idea coming through of things get nested. So we have major motivational forces that are with us all the time, and that we somehow embrace other things that we have to do and bring them in some way, so they get connected to these bigger forces that drive us. Anyway, all that I suppose is to say, I think it's a very complicated business. And in the discussions that Melissa and Jenny and I were having, we seem to be converging in some way around the idea that maybe there's some sort of continuum that I'm trying to represent here in terms of one end of the spectrum where we might posit, and these are actions and behaviors and attitudes towards the SDGs, where they might be rejected in some way, that we just don't believe. We don't believe in climate change. We positively disagree with it, and therefore we're going to ignore all the advice and suggestions that we might live in particular ways. There's also a situation where we're just completely ambivalent about stuff to do with the SDGs, maybe because we're ignorant, or just because we can't emote ourselves to care enough about it. So that in those sort of situations, then there's, in a sense, an inaction or a positive rejection, so action in the opposite way. And then there's a sort of middle domain where there is, maybe through education, maybe through some sort of exposure, we become aware of issues and begin to be interested in them at some level, and maybe concerned enough to start caring about things, where we maybe accept a level of responsibility. We may actually love some aspect of it, and really things resonate with us in such a way that we want to do something, or, and often this is the case, we feel guilty about something, we fear something and feel guilty about something, and that pushes into doing something. But all that panoply, if you like, of stuff to do with cognition, to do with emotion and curiosity, will goad us eventually into some sort of action. And at that level, the action could be superficial, could be very constrained and limited for all sorts of reasons, or it could be committed, sustained and deep, and leading then into activism and ultimately to extremism in some way. So that was my attempt to sort of map out, if you like, this whole way in which we may engage with, or not engage with, or actively disengage with the SDGs. So I have just a general question for discussion now, in terms of whether that type of continuum, you recognize it, whether it's of any value, and if it is, how might that be developed in some way to be even more relevant, more useful? So that's a general question to you now, and we'll have a few minutes discussion around that.
Any thoughts they want to share at the moment? Sorry, Jenny, yes, I can see, yeah.
Sorry, I was just trying to get my mic. Just a point going back really to the biographical state. I speak probably as the only one of the group who don't have children, and I wonder if that actually has some impact on my less enthusiasm perhaps than others.
Mm-hmm.
It makes for a different motivation, perhaps. Maybe a less selfish motivation. I don't know. I have arguments with my my daughters about whether having children is selfish or unselfish, and there's lots of arguments either way. So I don't know. Maybe it leaves space for different motivations. Jenny, what do others think?
I think.
Yes, Russ.
Yeah. The blue area in the middle of Norman's diagram is a brilliant summary of me, my feelings. I'm aware, I'm interested, I'm concerned, I feel a sense of responsibility. I love nature and animals and the sea and people, in my family at least. And I feel guilty that I'm not doing anywhere near enough to have any significant impact. And yeah, picking up Jenny's point, I do look ahead, and I just became a granddad for the first time recently. And that set me thinking about what kind of world young Wilfred is going to inherit from us, and that kind of thing. But I want to be active, but I feel that my actions are either going to be illegal or terribly inadequate.
Russ, when you speak, I spend all my time thinking about the suffragettes, because people said the same thing about the suffragettes. They would criticize them for the extreme things they did. They did things as extreme as some of the extreme things we're seeing. And I wonder whether they did that for their families or whether they did it for something bigger. And you've talked about the bigger thing. When you've gone down that list in the blue area, you're talking about more than Wilfred. Sorry, I can't hear you, Russ.
Yeah. No, I was just pondering. I think you're right. I think that's a very good point. I just feel that some of the forces against the things we're trying to do are really so great that they sort of eclipse the suffragettes. I mean, you go to some countries in the world, some of the biggest, the most densely populated ones, and there the citizens are the least empowered. Which is not, I have great respect for the suffragettes, and they're really heroic, far more than I'm inclined to be at the moment. But it's just the sheer scale of it that is so daunting, I think.
Were you wanting to respond to that, Norman? I could hear you.
Yeah, I mean, Russ, you talk a lot of sense there, and I think so scale has been a feature of our discussions previously, and of the things that people have said when they say this is what we want to do, and the idea that as individuals we are primarily concerned with this micro scale that affects us in our daily lives, but all wanting to have a bigger effect. And the only way you can have bigger effects usually is to work with other people. So the action in here, I guess, in my mind, when I was constructing this type of framework, was about individual action. But of course we can really develop that action bit into, it has many dimensions. And I think, again, picking up on what you're saying, Russ, there's a whole panoply of emotions that come back to us as we try to act, and as we realize that our actions are minuscule in the context of the enormous challenges that we're grappling with through the SDGs. So if the framework is turned into a more dynamic framework where each of these areas then have many dimensions to them, then I think that sort of is the way I feel you're nudging us to think about this. It's a dynamic thing rather than at the moment it looks very flat and it looks very like left to right in terms of flows of action and activity and information, but actually it's not that at all. It's much more turbulent. And as you say, feelings of inadequacy. I'm sure that affects all of us, and maybe that type of feedback as we're trying to act then demotivates us in terms of further action. I don't know. I'm just sort of reacting to what you've said.
Yeah. Valerie, it looks like you'd like to add something.
Yeah, I suppose I'm pondering that as we're talking, and one of the questions that Norman mentioned earlier: why do I do what I do? Why do I care? And one of the things that strikes me when we talk about both this, and I mean the general international we, is that we tend to look at the things we're not achieving, what's not happening, where we're not. And it's almost like we're afraid to talk about some success. And in my own work, even generally, I work a lot with young people. The two elements, it's nearly perceived as naive to suggest that we've achieved anything. And then it's a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, as Norman said, because you seem so minuscule in this, it's hard to motivate people if there isn't hope that we're getting even an inch forward. So I think it's a bit of a dilemma where there's an urgency. The language around all of this is so negative that I think even internally people become overwhelmed, and no matter how much green or how much you do or individually, it's like we've kind of whack-a-moled a little bit of hope. So I think that's a bit of a dilemma, that it's almost verboten to say that we've achieved something. Have we come any bit forward? And maybe to talk about that in tandem with all the things we haven't achieved.
Okay, Josephina, and then I'm just conscious of our time, Norman.
Yeah.
Do we need to, if we hear from Josephina?
Yeah.
Just regarding the awareness, I think because of that pessimism and thinking that we do not achieve things, maybe it's the size, the level of awareness we have so much information, so much overwhelming information that we cannot do anything about. And our influence is so small that I think, I was just thinking while we're listening and reading the slide, is that it's such a load of information, normally negative because it comes a bit biased from who is communicating. Because of course, if it's a good news, we have no newspapers that will say, oh, I don't know, such and such went well. We have news about wrong things. So I think we're a bit affected, but because of all this negative awareness, and our impact is just so small in a scale that we cannot communicate in such way. Maybe people were having I'm thinking about the plague and Middle Ages and Dark Ages. Probably they were really having not fun, so to speak. But people dying all around and not having any idea, and slavery and things that probably were going on even worse than now, but they were just aware of their little lives, not little in a bad sense, little in terms of size. And maybe we're so aware about what's happening here. I'm talking to someone in Tipperary. So what's the chance that we would have done that? That would be the little town, and Mrs. Something would have had a problem, and I would be involved with that problem, and maybe I could help her out, and I would feel really good because something went well. And I don't know whether I can do anything about Norman's garden up in Surrey.
Yeah,
because it's just too big.
Good
And
point.
maybe we have to bring down the scale regarding what's happening around us, being aware of it, but I don't know if block it, but probably be aware of what we're not able to do.
Yeah, very good points. I am going to press on now very quickly. In fact, I'm going to skip that one, just go to this one, and this is in a sense a lead into Jenny's contribution today. So yeah, our psychological needs are a driving force for us to try and live the best life that we can within our own circumstances. And as we've looked at in the past, we can detect within our own lives various spaces and contexts which involve different people doing different things, trying to achieve different things. And in our lives, we try to balance our needs across these different environments. And so we try to bring together 3 different psychological frameworks, if you like, within a single framework in terms of Maslow and Alderfer and Robbins, and map out the important things that drive our needs. And in a sense, this map was the basis by which Jenny and I derived the questionnaire that we used in our recent survey. So I'm going to say no more now. I'm just going to hand over to Jenny because she's going to take us through the survey results.
Thank you, Norman. So while Jenny sets up, we've got about 15 minutes for this next section.